Hi, this is Dale Holly, and I am recording my Module 9 Reflections video. So this week was about assistive technologies and what we can do with assistive technologies in the classroom. The first question asks, what past experiences have you had with assistive technologies? One of my best friends from the time I was 10 was and is deaf, and she went to a deaf school. She had hearing aids, even though they didn't really help her to hear, so I'm not really certain why she was forced to wear them. I suppose they thought that they would help her eventually, but they never did. But she went to a school that was for the deaf, but it was also for kids who had all kinds of intellectual disabilities. I went to her school a couple times just to visit, and there's all kinds of things that I had never seen before. Kids in wheelchairs, kids that had MS, kids that had that were deaf, kids that were hard of hearing. You know, most of these kids had hearing aids. Some of the kids had Down syndrome. Some of the kids, there were so many different disabilities, and I'd never seen anything like it. So it was very interesting to me. Some of the kids had actually I don't know what they're called, but metals, like walking aids. So yeah, it was quite an experience for me to see that kind of thing. Out of the assistive technologies looked at this week, which did you find the most interesting or most applicable for your teaching area? Actually, I am going to school. My major is elementary education, and my minor is special education, so very applicable. All of it is very applicable to me. So I would say, since my my major, what I want to do with my degree is be a special ed teacher, but I will be in an area which is mild to moderate disabilities. So probably the most applicable to me is the Thera Simplicity website, because I can create games and worksheets quickly and easily and just find what it is that I need, and what I'm teaching I'll already have a kind of like an idea in mind of what I want to do, and I'll just need visual aids. So I think that one would be the most applicable to me. As provided in the article, describe 3 of the 6 applications of assistive technologies and give an example of each that's not referenced in the article. So the first one that I found was called existence technologies, which is those things that are necessary to sustain life. So I have a friend who had a brain injury, and I guess I didn't know him at the time that he had the brain injury, but I guess he had to relearn how to do everything, how to walk, how to talk, how to eat. Also, my father has Parkinson's disease, and one thing that my dad did was he had deep brain surgery on both sides of his brain to help him to stop shaking. So I think that this could be applicable for a younger person if in fact they had a brain injury like my friend did, you know, where you might, my dad's quality of life wasn't very good because he shook so bad that he couldn't do a lot of things that you take for granted that you need to do in your life, like take a shower and feed yourself and get dressed and those kinds of things. So interestingly enough, my dad shook so bad with his right hand that he actually videoed himself trying to feed himself, and he was shaking so bad that his food was falling right off of his fork. Then he had the surgery done and was able to videotape himself again and show how still his hand was. But then he held up his left hand and he shook really bad again on that side. So he had to have the opposite side done. So major surgery, but huge in rewards for what a difference it made in his life. And I do believe, you know, just judging from my friend and how he described when he was quite young, before he was out of high school, how his brain injury had debilitated him to the point that he had to relearn everything. So I think that those types of things, there's actually electrodes planted in my dad's brain in order to make him still, and he has actually little cases on either side of his body that control, they have dials on them, and they control the electrodes in his brain. Huge life difference. The second one that I chose was positioning. So I have actually two good friends that are in wheelchairs. One of my friends that's in a wheelchair, he occasionally jolts like this, and you can tell that it kind of comes from his leg and bottom area. And I asked him about it, and he said, you know, his muscles just get tired because they're always in that same position when he's awake. And so it made me think of these stand-up wheelchairs that I've seen, and I just found it online. Just Googled it. But what a difference it makes that these wheelchairs, that you get into them in a sitting position, but then they actually can lift you up until you're in a standing position, and how much that can redefine your life. You know, if you're somebody that's in a wheelchair, not only does it allow you to stretch out those muscles and not constantly be in the same position, but what a difference that would make if you know, if you're always meeting somebody that's standing and you are in a seated position and they have to actually look down to see you, what a difference it would make if you could actually be face to face and you could be upright. And I think that that's it's a quality of life issue, and I think it's a good thing. And the last thing that I chose was environmental interaction. So like I said, one of my closest friends from the time I was 10, she's deaf, and she has all kinds of things that function on either a light switch, like her alarm clock functions on a light switch. It doesn't wake me up, but it wakes her up because she's very in tune to light. Like, that's way more attention getting than it is to me. But also she has things that just vibrate, just shake, and she can tell the difference between, you know, this light blink and that kind of vibration, and so she knows what the difference is. And like I said, I visited her school a couple times, and there was different lights for the bell ringing at the end of class, because of course the kids can't hear the bell, so they had to use light switches instead. So that'd be like the end of class and the beginning of class. And then they had different ones for fire alarms and other alarms that they needed. So very interesting. And that fell into what I call the environmental interaction. She needs those things in order to be able to, you know, realize when she needs to do this or do that. So, and then the last thing was to find one additional assistive technology that's not listed in the module and provide an overview of what it is, how it works, and where you found it. So because I have had so much interaction with deaf people since I was very young, of course I'm pretty in tune to any technologies that can help the deaf. So one of the things that I know about is Hearing Loop, and I've never actually seen it work, but I thought it was pretty cool. I found this, I just googled it, and there's lots of them, but the one I looked at was at hearingloop.org. And so from what I understand, they can put this around a classroom so that it's like around where the baseboard would be, and it's just a wire loop, and it runs on an electromagnetic signal that triggers certain hearing aids if they have a telecoil in the hearing aid, and also anyone that has had the cochlear implant put in, there's a telecoil in there. So it makes it easier to hear. Being that I'm not deaf, I don't really understand why it makes it easier to hear, but when they're in a classroom environment and they're trying to hear a speaker at the front of the room, it's trickier than, you know, if you're a hearing person just listening to somebody speak through it, especially through like a microphone or something like that, or even just a teacher trying to project from the front of the room and reach all of the students. So I guess this telecoil is really, the hearing loop really helps deaf and hard of hearing students to hear better in the classroom. So from what I understand, though, this is also a technology that can work in your home, so it can run you like $150 to $300 to put it into, like, say, a TV room at your house, but it can run into thousands of dollars, like $3,000 to $8,000 for one classroom, which I think is ridiculously expensive. And being that it can only be in that one classroom, how reasonable is it to suggest that they might do this for every classroom, especially when you have, students that are wanting to be in the general education classrooms, and that's where we want them because it's just a better education for them. How many classrooms can we really equip with this hearing loop if that's the cost of it? And so, as time goes on, though, I think that technologies become more reasonably cost, but also they advance, and they, maybe this could become something that's not so stationary, that could be redesigned to move about with the students as they're needed. So that's all I have for you. Thanks.